faithfully delivering value, interpreting great books from around the world. Hello, this is Sally's Book Talk. Today we're exploring A History of Italy by Christopher Duggan, professor of history at the University of Reading in the UK, part of the Cambridge Concise History series. This series was authored by prominent scholars from the UK, US, and other nations, commissioned by Cambridge University Press. Since its launch in the 1990s, it's achieved tremendous success with over 10 reprints, and A History of Italy is one of its key volumes. Author Duggan was a British historian who devoted his life to studying Italian history. In this book, using Italy's nation-building as the central theme, he concisely traces how unification was achieved, how the Italian identity was forged, and the challenges encountered along the way. My narration will unfold in 4 parts. First, the prolonged era of fragmentation. Second, the awakening of Italian national consciousness. Third, the journey toward unification. Fourth, the shaping of modern Italy. All right, let's begin part 1, the extended period of division. Modern Italy primarily comprises a southern European peninsula and 2 islands, the Apennine Peninsula, Sicily, and Sardinia, covering over 300,000 square kilometers, slightly smaller than China's Yunnan province. But back then, this region wasn't called Italy. The name originated from a southern area of the peninsula. Vitellia meant land where calves thrive. Eventually, Vitellia evolved into Italia, becoming the name for the entire peninsula. For simplicity, we'll use Italy consistently hereafter without strict distinctions. Historically, Italy's borders shifted, but we'll refer to all areas within modern Italy as Italy. Archaeology reveals human activity in Italy dating back to the Paleolithic era, roughly 10,000 years ago. Initially, these early humans were hunter-gatherers who gradually transitioned to farming and herding. Around 2000 BC, ancient Latin tribes settled in Italy. Over a millennium later, Greeks migrated en masse, establishing numerous city-states. Successive waves of migrants intermingled on this land, forming the Romans and cultivating Roman civilization. In 753 BC, Rome was founded in the Central Apennines. Thereafter, through the regal, republican, and imperial eras, Rome grew into a vast empire spanning Europe, Asia, and Africa. As the birthplace, Italy naturally formed the core of the Roman Empire, where Roman civilization first took root before spreading elsewhere. Take Roman law, for example. It was first implemented in Rome with great success before being adopted across the empire. Christianity followed a similar path. Though originating in the Middle East, Roman emperors and nobility championed it, shifting its center to Rome. By the 4th century AD, the Roman Church held authority above other dioceses. In the centuries that followed, regardless of political shifts, Christianity remained Italy's dominant faith. This holds true even today. From the 3rd century, the Roman Empire faced invasions by Germanic tribes, known as the barbarian invasions, lasting a century. Finally, in 476 AD, Germanic forces sacked Rome, ending the Roman Empire. This not only shattered the empire, but plunged its core territory, Italy, into prolonged fragmentation. From 476 AD until Italy's unification in 1861, no unified government, nor even a proper central authority, existed across the peninsula. Right after the empire's fall, Italy was divided among 3 powers. The north, including modern Turin and Venice, was held by the Lombards, a Germanic branch who established the Lombard kingdom. The central region around Rome was governed by the Church, the Papal States, while the south, including Naples and Sicily, fell under Byzantine control. This balance lasted about 300 years until the 8th century, when Lombard expansion demanded tribute from the Papal States. The alarmed Pope appealed to neighboring Francia for help. Francia was then Europe's mightiest realm, spanning modern Germany, Austria, and France. Its King Charles was ambitious and had long eyed Italy. Answering the call, he crossed the Alps in 773 AD, defeating the Lombard kingdom. In gratitude, Pope Leo III crowned Charles Emperor of the Romans in 800 AD, elevating France to an empire with northern Italy as its domain. Per Charlemagne's plan, the next move was advancing south to conquer all Italy. But fate denied him this opportunity. In 814, Charlemagne died. By 843, his grandsons divided the empire into three parts, with the Eastern Frankish kingdom later becoming the Holy Roman Empire, incorporating central and northern Italy. And Holy Roman imperial rule was relatively loose. Regions pledging allegiance received autonomy without internal interference. Thus, cities across central and northern Italy gained autonomy, verbally submitting to the empire while secretly establishing family rule. Notable examples included Milan's Visconti family, Genoa's Doria family, and Florence's Medici family. These so-called autonomous cities possessed substantial independence, essentially functioning as city-states, leading to two consequences. First, economic prosperity and cultural development. Without central oversight, each city developed according to its geography and resources. Venice leveraged its coastal position to expand overseas trade, becoming the Mediterranean's commercial hub. Economic prowess narrative. Milan and Florence dominated Europe's textile industry, with Florence advancing banking to become the continent's financial center. By the 14th century, 4 of Europe's 5 largest cities were Italian: Venice, Milan, Genoa, and Florence, with Paris being the only peer. Economic growth fueled cultural advancement. The Renaissance flourished in northern Italy from the 14th to 1600s, heavily supported by these great families. For example, Michelangelo created 4 sculptures, Night, Day, Dawn, and Dusk, for the Medici tombs. These are both Michelangelo's masterpieces and treasures of human artistry. Conversely, power struggles among these families deepened Italy's fragmentation. Major cities constantly battled over territorial disputes and trade conflicts, forming and betraying alliances. At times, Venice allied with Florence against Milan. Other times, Florence joined Genoa against Venice. Quite the spectacle. All sought foreign reinforcements. European powers like Spain, France, and Austria exploited this, eventually dominating and establishing spheres of influence. This political landscape deeply distressed Italy's intellectuals. In 1513, Machiavelli of Florence published The Prince, calling for a strong ruler to unify Italy and resist foreign interference. But this was merely the view of a few elites. Ordinary Italians had no such concept.
They identified only as Milanese, Venetians, or Florentines. The idea of being Italian simply didn't exist.
In short, from the 5th to 1600 centuries, over 1100 years, Italy remained fractured with rival factions. Beyond shared Catholic faith, they had little else binding them together. Yet one man nearly changed this single-handedly: Napoleon. This brings us to part 2 of our narrative: the awakening of Italian national consciousness. In 1789, the French Revolution erupted, prompting Britain, Austria, Prussia, and others to form an anti-French coalition. Austria used northern Italy as its base for repeated incursions. To eliminate this threat, in spring 1896, Napoleon, then a French Republic brigadier general, crossed the Alps in a surprise attack on northern Italy. By 1800, Napoleon launched another campaign, advancing through central and southern regions to occupy the entire peninsula. From 1800 to 1815, 15 years of French rule brought 3 crucial developments for modern Italy.
First, establishing Italy's fundamental borders.
Napoleon controlled all Italy except Sicily and Sardinia, defining its core territory. Moreover, he established the Italian Republic in the north with Milan as capital, the first state named Italy. Second, sparking the idea of Italian unification. Though dividing Italy into administrative zones, Napoleon implemented uniform systems, abolishing tariffs, reforming taxes, standardizing measurements, and overhauling education. The Napoleonic Code replaced local laws, integrating fragmented city-states into an efficient bureaucracy that bridged regional divides and facilitated commerce. Italian regions became more interconnected than at any time since Rome's fall, an unprecedented shift. If Italians couldn't previously envision a unified nation, they now had a tangible model. Napoleon also achieved something monumental, abolishing feudalism. The French implemented the same reforms in Italy, dismantling local feudal powers and liberating peasants from serfdom. Originally, feudal forces acted like scattered fortresses across the peninsula, blocking central authorities' emergence and expansion. By eliminating these strongholds, the French unintentionally paved the way for Italian unification. Crucially, these reforms occurred only in central northern Italy. The south remained feudal territory. This explains why Italy's unification movement later emerged in the north. Napoleon's third major impact was awakening Italian national consciousness. Despite progressive aspects, foreign rule bred resentment, especially when Napoleon's wars led to crushing taxes on Italians, galvanizing elite nationalist sentiment. They urged Italians to unite against invaders, while Britain and Austria fanned these sentiments to undermine France. But reality delivered a cold shower to Italian elites. After Napoleon's fall, the 1815 Congress of Vienna redrew Europe's map. French interests in Italy transferred to Austria, with only Sardinia retaining independence. Sardinia comprised Sardinia and northern peninsula, yet Italy remained manipulated. Still, the seeds of unification took root among elites, making unity inevitable. This leads us to Part 3's core narrative. Mid-19th century saw awakened nobles, intellectuals, and bourgeoisie launch the unification movement spearheaded by the three fathers of the fatherland, Mazzini, Garibaldi, and Cavour. All hailed from Sardinia. Mazzini, first among them, was raised by fiercely nationalistic parents. Influenced by them, Mazzini dedicated himself to unification at 16. He joined secret societies, plotting revolts until betrayed and arrested. In 1833, Mazzini fled to Marseille, founding Young Italy to organize uprisings, yet faced repeated failures. As a revolutionary, nearly all his endeavors collapsed. His contribution was promoting Italian unification and, with extraordinary personal charm, leading many young people onto the path to unify the homeland. Among them was another key figure of the three fathers of the fatherland, Garibaldi. Garibaldi was 2 years younger than Mazzini. At age 26, he met Mazzini in Marseille and, inspired by him, joined the Young Italy Party. Compared to Mazzini, Garibaldi had much stronger execution abilities tied to his legendary experiences. In 1835, after a planned uprising was exposed, Garibaldi exiled to South America, fought in local wars, organized an Italian immigrant legion, and achieved notable successes. This experience helped Garibaldi build military expertise, laying the groundwork for leading Italy's independence wars. In June 1847, Garibaldi returned to his hometown of Nice. His timing was perfect, but why? Under King Carlo Alberto's enlightened rule, the Kingdom of Sardinia had become the Apennine Peninsula's strongest nation. As national power grew, calls for Italian unification surged, and revolutionary movements swept Europe in early 1848. In March, revolution erupted in Vienna, Austria's capital. With Austria distracted, Milan rebelled first. King Alberto saw the moment as ripe, pledged support, and sent troops. He tasked Garibaldi with organizing volunteers to aid Milan. Initially, Austria's overstretched front favored Sardinia, but unfortunately, Italians faced a god-of-war figure, Austrian Field Marshal Radetzky, who fought in Austro-Turkish and anti-French wars, defeating Napoleon at Leipzig in 1813. From 1831 to 1847, Radetzky commanded Austrian forces in northern Italy, knowing Italy inside out. After the Milan uprising began, he immediately moved to crush it. To this old marshal, Alberto and Garibaldi were novices. Indeed, Alberto fought twice, lost both times, and abdicated, passing the throne to his son. Victor Emmanuel II fought for over a year, failing to unify Italy while boosting the declining Austria.
News of victory reached Vienna, and Radetzky was hailed as a national hero.
Johann Strauss Sr. composed the famous Radetzky March, a renowned piece with lively rhythm and spirited melody, but to Italian ears it likely sounded full of sorrow. Acknowledging issues exposed by the war, Victor Emmanuel II promoted talent after ascending the throne. Most crucially, Cavour, the last of the three fathers. Born into Turin nobility, Cavour received elite education and possessed exceptional governance skills. In February 1852, Cavour became finance minister, and by November, prime minister. Cavour understood that unification required first strengthening domestic foundations. Under his leadership, Sardinia signed commercial treaties with France, Britain, and Austria, establishing free trade policies. He also promoted banking, railroad construction, and shipping, advancing industrialization. Diplomatically, Cavour realized Sardinia alone couldn't defeat Austria. Foreign allies were essential. But who? Napoleon III of France's Second Empire. Napoleon's nephew, exiled to Italy at 7, spent his formative years there, developing deep sympathy for Italian independence. And with such a neighbor, Cavour couldn't let this opportunity slip. Exploiting Franco-Austrian tensions, he provoked Napoleon III to attack Austria. Cavour promised France the cities of Nice and Savoie in exchange for independence support. Napoleon III agreed. In 1859, April saw France declare war on Austria, with Napoleon III personally leading troops. With Radetzky deceased, Austrian forces retreated repeatedly, allowing Sardinia to seize Lombardy. Just as victory seemed certain, Napoleon III suddenly halted. Why? Two reasons. First, Sardinia moved against the Papal States in Rome. France's Catholic majority fiercely opposed this, forcing Napoleon III to protect the Pope. Second, while supporting Italian unification, Napoleon III prioritized French interests. A unified Italy meant a powerful neighbor, not necessarily beneficial for France. After crippling Austria, Napoleon III cut losses, secretly signing an armistice behind Cavour's back. Per this agreement, Sardinia gained Lombardy while Venice remained under Austrian control. Napoleon III didn't hold back. He still took Nice and Savoy. Since the goals weren't net, Cavour resigned in anger. Actually, objectively speaking, Sardinia gained more than it lost. The Franco-Austrian War shattered the old order. Italian nationalists were stirring, plotting uprisings in small states like Tuscany and Parma, driving out the monarchs. After the war, these areas were all annexed to the Kingdom of Sardinia, expanding its influence into central Italy. In April 1860, a peasant uprising erupted in Sicily. Garibaldi realized that if he could turn this peasant revolt into a national revolution, there was hope for unifying Italy. He gathered a force of over 1,000 men and marched on Sicily, historically known as the Expedition of the Thousand. The expeditionary force quickly occupied Sicily and then advanced northward. At the same time, King Victor Emmanuel II personally led troops southward. On October 25, 1860, Victor Emmanuel II and Garibaldi met north of Naples, incorporating southern Italy into the Kingdom of Sardinia. So, the following year, in March 1861, the Kingdom of Italy was proclaimed, with Florence as its capital. Victor Emmanuel II became King of Italy, and Cavour became the first prime minister. Thus modern Italy was born, but the unification was not yet complete. French troops were still stationed in Rome, and Venice was in Austrian hands. The Kingdom of Italy was clearly unable to fight both enemies at once. Fortunately, Italians found a new ally in the rising power of Prussia. In 1866, the Austro-Prussian War broke out. Austria was defeated, and Italy seized the opportunity to reclaim Venice. In 1870, the Franco-Prussian War broke out. France was defeated, and Italian troops marched into Rome. Pope Pius IX retreated to the Vatican. Italy's capital was moved from Florence to Rome. Thus, Italy achieved complete unification, but it did not embark on a path to national strength and prosperity. On the contrary, post-Union Italy faced numerous problems and was at risk of collapse at any time. Elites tried every means to integrate the nation, which is what we'll cover in Part 4. building national consensus and shaping Italians. On the surface, the Kingdom of Italy was a unified state, but internally, there were intense regional conflicts, including East-West and North-South tensions. First, we'll discuss the East-West conflict. Western Italy, close to France, was naturally prone to French influence. For example, the official languages of the Kingdom of Sardinia were Italian and French. More importantly, the Catholic Church was in Rome, and France, with Catholicism as its state religion, also prioritized Western Italy, preventing others from meddling in the East.
It's more complex.
Northeastern Venice was close to the Byzantine Empire, bearing distinct Byzantine influences in religion, culture, and art. Venice also experienced Austrian rule, absorbing significant influence, while Apulia in the southeast shared more cultural similarities with Greece. Now, to north-south tensions, Napoleon abolished feudalism in northern Italy, but left southern Naples and Sicily largely unchanged. Thus, the Italian unification movement originated in the north. After unification, northerners naturally dominated high positions in the Kingdom of Italy. And the statistics show northerners held 60% of senior government posts. Prime ministers were typically northerners, and 3/4 of generals were from the north. This made southern Italians feel excluded from national affairs, breeding alienation. Some estimate fewer than 100 of the South's 7 million people supported unification, perhaps exaggerated, but Southern resentment was real. Throughout the 1860s, revolts erupted across the South, especially peasant uprisings in Sicily, forcing the central government to deploy massive troops for suppression and occupation, pushing Southern social order toward collapse. This fertile ground gave rise to the mafia. Italy's three major mafia groups, Sicilian Cosa Nostra, Neapolitan Camorra, and Calabrian 'Ndrangheta, all originated in the south. Alarmed, elites launched the Shaping Italians campaign to bridge divides, build consensus, and forge national identity. Where to begin? Elites focused on three pillars: compulsory education, economic development, and foreign expansion. First, compulsory education. At unification, 2/3 of Italians were uneducated, reaching 100% in many southern areas. Thus, the state mandated schooling, sending masses of youth to classrooms. By the early 20th century, Sicily's enrollment rate hit 74%. Schools taught not only knowledge but also patriotism. Italian writer Edmondo de Amicis authored a book specifically for this, Heart, Cuore. It taught children loyalty to the king, love for country, and respect for parents. His promotion of patriotism perfectly aligned with the Italian government's agenda, leading to strong endorsement. This made the book translated into many languages, creating significant influence. Now to economic development. Post-unification, Italy's population stood at 27 million, making it a major European nation demographically. But 60% were engaged in farming. As an agricultural country, Italy's economy lagged, with many unable to afford adequate food. Improving citizens' livelihoods would naturally strengthen national identity. Driven by the government, Italy's industry flourished rapidly. Take steel. Annual production was under 4,000 tons in 1880, but reached 157,000 tons by 1889. This absorbed rural surplus labor, created an urban middle class, stabilized society, and quickly ushered in economic prosperity, all tied to one man. Giovanni Giolitti, a true statesmanship genius. He entered politics at 20, rising steadily through exceptional political skill. In 1892, Giolitti became prime minister. From then until 1921, he served 5 terms as prime minister. Under his leadership, Italy achieved greater economic progress, dubbed the Giolittian boom. During this period, Italy's silk industry captured 1/3 of the global market share. The electricity sector grew rapidly, surpassing France, while banking flourished, forming strong financial capital. Overall, Italy grew swiftly, with GDP growth rates second only to Germany in Europe. Simultaneously, Giolitti enacted laws protecting workers' rights, like banning child labor and mandating weekly rest days. He also established a national pension fund, eliminating workers' retirement worries. This Giolitti won widespread support. For a time, Italy thrived and national identity soared dramatically. However, after 1907, global economic downturn hit Italy. Giolitti's insistence on worker protections sparked discontent among entrepreneurs and the middle class. In this climate, Giolitti took a risky move, launching war. He believed fighting external enemies would unite people, fostering national consciousness. In September 1911, Italy invaded Libya in North Africa. Despite high costs, it ignited Italian nationalism. In 1914, World War I broke out. Under public pressure, Italy joined the Allied side. Fortunately, Italy chose the right side. The Allies won, making Italy a victorious nation. Nationalists were absolutely thrilled, but the good times didn't last. Italy soon suffered heavy blows. First, due to poor battlefield performance, it gained little in post-war negotiations, failing to offset war losses. Second, post-war military downsizing and arms industry collapse caused unemployment to skyrocket. Over 2 million jobless by 1919, with absurdly high prices. Food riots swept through central and northern Italy. These twin blows exhausted Giolitti during his fifth and final term as prime minister. His reputation hit rock bottom. In this climate, fascism took root. Enter Mussolini. Mussolini was once a leader of Italy's Socialist Party. During W1, he advocated Italy joining the Allies, contradicting party policy, and was expelled. Mussolini went all in, founding his own party with increasingly extreme rhetoric. After Italy joined the Allies, Mussolini enlisted. Post-discharge, he posed as a war hero, claiming only strongman rule could save Italy from chaos and weakness. In 1919, Mussolini founded the world's first fascist party in Milan, the National Fascist Party. Fascist comes from Latin fascius, a bundle of rods with an axe, symbolizing ancient Roman authority. Mussolini adopted this term precisely to showcase his strongman rule ideology. After the fascist party's founding, Italy's economy kept declining and social unrest worsened. People in despair often seek saviors. Fascism exploited this psychology, snowballing in influence. By summer 1922, the National Fascist Party surpassed 300,000 members.
Mussolini also formed the Black Shirts paramilitary force.
That October, the fascists mobilized tens of thousands to march from Naples toward Rome. Panicked King Victor Emmanuel III appointed Mussolini prime minister, launching 2 decades of fascist rule. We all know the fascist regime collapsed and Mussolini was disgraced. But unlike Hitler, he wasn't a strong dictator. On the contrary, his rule had weak foundations, and the National Fascist Party's control over society paled compared to Germany's. A brief Nazi comparison. After taking power, they abolished the Weimar Constitution, made Hitler head of state, and purged administrative, judicial, and educational systems. Nazi party members occupied all key positions, militarily beyond controlling the Wehrmacht. Nazis created the SS directly under their command, measures ensuring Hitler's absolute authority. By contrast, the National Fascist Party was practically amateur. First, the Constitution remained intact. The king stayed head of state and military commander-in-chief. Mussolini was merely head of government, with the bureaucracy largely unchanged and unpurged. Even police and carabinieri weren't fully under fascist control. The Black Shirts? They remained an amateur force, militarily incomparable to the SS. The fascist party cultivated leader worship too. Mussolini's posters covered streets, his deeds widely glorified. Members stood at attention showing respect during calls with the leader, but these were superficial formalities. The Hitler cult operated on another level. Criticizing him in Nazi Germany meant dire consequences. In Italy, however, public obedience sufficed. In academic journals or private speeches, free expression remained possible. Why such weakness? The same old problem, internal fragmentation. Despite the Shaping Italians campaign, deep divisions persisted among Italians across regions. Southern regions resented Mussolini as a northern upstart, and cabinet dissatisfaction ran high. Thus, Mussolini never held absolute power. Logically, he should have balanced factions cautiously. But impulsive and vain, he refused to admit Italy was a poor European nation, instead pretending strength, dragging Italy into World War II. As Italy's army suffered repeated defeats, domestic discontent with Mussolini swelled. In June 1943, Allied forces landed in Sicily, prompting Italy's withdrawal from the war. In 1945, Mussolini and his mistress were captured by partisans while fleeing, executed together, and their bodies publicly displayed in Milan's square. As for the king, his alliance with fascism had made him unpopular.
In July 1946, Italy held a referendum where citizens chose a republic, ending the kingdom and establishing the Italian Republic.
Italy turned a new page in its history. Post-war Italy faced immense challenges: economic backwardness and social fragmentation. In the early 1950s, 2.7 million Italian families lived in poverty, a quarter of the population, with 1 million unable to afford meat or sugar. Poverty concentrated in the South, where harsh conditions bred resentment toward the Republic. Continued economic decline risked renewed fragmentation. In fact, Sicily had already demanded autonomy. Independence movements were emerging locally. For the ruling Christian Democrats, economic development, bridging divides, and rebuilding national identity became urgent priorities. Fortunately, Italians succeeded this time, thanks to catching Europe's integration wave. From 1945 to 1954, Christian Democrat leader Alcide de Gasperi served 7 years as Italy's prime minister. He believed Italy's revival required joining the European community, especially enabling labor mobility so Italians could work abroad, easing domestic unemployment, and, while remittances would boost economic growth. Thus, under de Gasperi, Italy joined NATO, the Council of Europe, and the European Coal and Steel Community, becoming a founding member of the European Economic Community. This effectively spurred economic development. From 1958 to 1963, Italian manufacturing grew 14% annually, with per capita income soaring 134% over 18 years. Italians could finally afford meat, while refrigerators and TVs entered ordinary homes. By 1970, over 10 million Italians owned private cars. Economic growth nurturing cultural flourishing. Post-war Italy excelled in film, literature, and fashion, producing internationally influential directors and writers, plus luxury brands. Economic and cultural progress naturally strengthened national identity and cohesion. Meanwhile, the Italian government focused on language unification. Historically, Italy had numerous dialects, plus French, German, and Catalan-speaking regions, all vastly different languages. People from different areas struggled to communicate. So the government actively promoted Standard Italian, achieving remarkable results. In the late 19th century, only 3.5% spoke Standard Italian. By the 1970s, this rose to 70%. Language unification formed the foundation for national and ethnic unity. Thus, barriers between Italians faded as unified national consciousness became mainstream. The single quotation mark shaping Italians movement launched by elites over a century ago finally succeeded in the 1970s, but a nation's journey never remained smooth sailing. Entering the new century, Italy faced common European woes: economic stagnation and soaring debt. Its 0.25% annual growth in the 2000s ranked among the world's worst. The global financial crisis hit particularly hard. Bad loans surged, businesses collapsed, unemployment rose, recession deepened, forcing massive government bond issuings. By the books cut off in 2010, Italy's debt reached 120% of GDP, and conditions worsened thereafter. By 2018, this climbed to 130%. What does this mean? Remember, when Greece's debt crisis erupted, their debt was just 110% of GDP. Italy has crossed that red line. Thus, analysts fear Italy could be Europe's next debt crisis epicenter. Will it overcome challenges or plunge into the abyss? Nobody knows for sure. I'll conclude with the book's final line. Italy's future path remains unknown. All right, we've completed the Cambridge history of Italy. Reading notes are below the audio. See you next time.